Hello, welcome to another edition of Ours to Bricks Ministries, Innocent and Incarcerated, an American Nightmare, with your favorite felon, the Rev. Dr. Kev. Today's episode is the evidence of innocence. We are going to look at Gary's case today. I want to go over what the state alleges and the problems with them allegations. The evidence that shows that this man is living this nightmare as he sits in prison, innocent. Innocent of murdering his friend and his friend's sister. Now, we're going to hear Gary's story. Gary was in his late 20s. Winter, the beginning of 1992. He had a friend, Tommy Griffin, that was hung out with all the time. They were great friends. So good of friends that Tommy even had his own room in the place that Gary and his uncle maintained. There was never an ill word, or in Gary's word, never a cross word ever said between him and Tommy. With all that being said, let me give you some facts of the case. On February 24th, 1992, which also happened to be Gary's 28th birthday, Tommy Griffin's body was found shot to death on the riverbanks of Blount County, Tennessee. His sister, Connie Branham, was found, who went out looking for him, and she didn't return home, was found burned alive in a vehicle 4 days later in Sevier County, Tennessee. Now, in the case, the witnesses for the state testified that they had seen Griffin at Howie's Hideaway, a local bar, with Gary Sutton and James Dillinger, Sutton's uncle, on the night that Griffin was murdered. As a matter of fact, the three were close friends, and they were often seen at the Howie's Hideaway and frolicking around town, just like guys those age and friends do in a small town. This particular evening was different. Now, the state alleges that there was an altercation between Gary and his uncle James Dillinger, and that had an altercation with Tommy Griffin. The state alleges that Tommy Griffin was kicked out of their vehicle in a physical altercation and was later picked up on the side of the road with these two men in a truck who have never been identified. But they arrested Tommy Griffin for public intoxication. Upon his arrival to the jail, James Dillinger and Gary Sutton arrived to check on their friend to see how to bond him out. They had a policy that they had to be in the of intoxication, you have to be in custody for 4 hours. So they were told to return later. Well, they returned later, and still, they bought him out a little earlier than the 4 hours. It was actually just like 15 minutes short. He was bonded out of jail at 11:25 p.m. Now, Gary Sutton and James Dillinger always maintained their innocence and always maintained that Tommy did not leave with him that night. Tommy left with a woman, short, dark hair, in a dark, boxy vehicle. That has been the story since day one. And of course, wouldn't you know, the jail cameras just so happened not to work that night. So we have no video evidence. There's also was some altercation at the bar. This has never been confirmed either. But still, there was these guys, Chief and Cowboy, never been identified. It's important to note when Tommy was arrested that day for public intoxication that he seemed scared. He wouldn't tell the officers why or what happened. And again, the officer noted that Griffin was with two older gentlemen driving a dark colored truck. These men have never been identified. Well, before Griffin was bonded out, while he's in the drunk tank, his trailer was set fire. A family member noticed the fire, and they asked Dillinger if Griffin was inside. He told her that Griffin had left with a woman he had met at the bar. When Sutton and Dillinger learned that Griffin had been arrested, they went to the jail to bond him out. And there's a little bit of conflicting on there because the jail says that Dillinger showed up shortly thereafter, but so there's a lot of time discrepancies in this case. But again, they've always maintained Griffin left with that same woman from the bar. They said had dark hair and was driving a Ford Falcon. Neither the woman or the car have ever been identified by law enforcement. After Tommy's body was found February 24th on the riverbanks of Tennessee. When the body was found, the initial investigators said there was blood, was still tacky. The gunshots appeared fresh, and the body was full of rigor mortis. So full of rigor mortis, they had issues loading it into the ambulance. They saw no shotgun shells or nothing at the scene that day. 3 days later, detectives performed a search on Dillinger's property on his trailer and found some spent shotgun shells. Those shotgun shells may not even have been Dillinger's. His trailer was shot up just weeks prior. A police report was filed. So those shells could have even been from the person or persons that shot up his trailer. We'll get to that in a minute. But also, magically, two of those shells that matched the shells that they found out of this yard, after that, Detective Widner decided to go back and do a subsequent search of the area where Tommy's body was found. Allegedly, he found two shotgun shells. These two shotgun shells are just lying there, just beautiful, side by side, perfectly lined up, mere inches from where the body was found just 3 days prior. But they weren't seen. They weren't in the initial crime photographs, but here they are. Just perfectly sitting side by side. Now, the medical examiner who did the autopsy said Tommy was murdered on the 24th. The only evidence that pointed to a murder of a different date was that of Dr. Harlan, the hired gun from the prosecution. Now, I started to touch on some of the problems with their case, but let's get into more of the problems with their case. So the state alleges that on February 21st, 1992, that Friday evening, after Gary Sutton and James Dillinger bailed Tommy Griffin out of jail at 11:25 p.m. from the Blount County Jail, a mere 30 minutes later, they were able to get a shotgun, get Tommy out to this rural area, which is a the timeline is hard to match. It had to be speeding and flying. If you're going to shoot and kill somebody, just bailing them out of jail, seems highly unlikely. For one, you're going to go pick somebody up out of jail with a shotgun in your vehicle to go take them out and kill them. It's furthermore even illogical that you would be speeding and flying to get someone to somewhere so you can kill them. In a truck, they're going to be, you know, you're together. Surely they'd be giving up some sort of resistance. So there's that. But Jason McDonald testified that he heard 2 shots at 11:55 p.m. around that same area where Tommy Griffin's body was found. This was a key point of evidence for the state. James Dillinger and Gary Sutton, they claimed to observe the white Dodge Ram truck. This was also another key piece of evidence. Now here's the issue. Jason McDonald, what the state didn't ask him about on the stand, what they didn't ask about on record was purposely this. Not only did he hear 2 gunshots, but he saw a dark, boxy vehicle leaving that area. And it was not a Camaro. That's the only dark vehicle that Gary Sutton owned. Now, it gets even deeper. Barbara Gordon was another witness who saw the white truck. But yet, there was an alternative suspect. Remember the 2 guys? Well, there's an alternative suspect, Lester Johnson, who had motive, who Tommy Griffin and Connie Branham are witnesses against a case where Lester Johnson sliced the throat of Tina Hartman. They had been threatened by Lester Johnson. 2 men, older men that fit this description, as a chief and cowboy, turns out to be part of Lester Johnson's crowd. The woman in the dark car turned out to be associated with Lester Johnson. Lester Johnson had motive. Lester Johnson had opportunity. He was dropped off in Sevier County just mere hours earlier. There is so much discrepancies. Now, here is, to me, one of the biggest. Not just the shotgun shells. They look like they were set there. Go look, if you're not a shotgun person, pull up videos. I'm sure they're all over the internet of people shooting a shotgun. Watch them shells ejected. Look at the shells on the ground. Go to a shooting range or something and look at shells where they shoot shotguns. They're never side by side perfectly laying together. I don't care if you shoot 50 of them. I've never had 2 perfectly side by side like was in that picture. I don't think anybody has. And this has never been noticed in 31 years. Also, it's important to note, we talked about the autopsy. We talked about the date of death. The state alleges that he was killed on the 21st. His body was found on the 24th. Now, remember, initial investigators said the blood was tacky, the gunshots appeared fresh, and the body was so full of rigor mortis, they had problems getting into an ambulance. Rigor mortis lasts up to 36 hours. Well, that's all scientific. I mean, let me bring this down to something everybody can understand. cut yourself. You're working on the yard, you're playing, you're doing something, you get a cut. You pay it no mind, you keep on going. Well, within a matter of hours, sometimes minutes, that blood is dried. Even a big cut, it's going to dry in a matter of hours. And once it starts to coagulate there, it's going to stop. So, with a gunshot wound, two gunshot wounds to the base of the head, the heart didn't beat very long after that. I can guarantee it killed brain activity. Well, so there's no blood pumping out of that wound, no pressure to push blood out. So that blood's going to pool right there. And so 3 days, and it was still tacky. Kind of hard to believe. That just don't match up. Again, rigor mortis, 36 hours. The only evidence that was differentiated from this date, from the 24th, the only thing that pointed towards this date of the 21st to match the state's timeline in their guided witnesses was Dr. Harlan, who never examined the body himself, who determined a date of death from organ slides, which is scientifically impossible. And those are the words of the current chief medical examiner of the state of Tennessee. This case is riddled with errors. The autopsy report says the date of death is February 24th of 1992. Time unable to determine. Cause of death, 2 shotgun blasts to the base of the skull. So now, let me tell you this. The primary purposes of an autopsy report are to determine the cause of death, the date of death, and time of death. They were unable to determine the time, so they put that down. Unable to determine time and death. Evidently, they determined the date of death because the date of death is on there and the cause of death. Everybody I've talked to in the medical community says the date of death on the autopsy is the official date of death. So how is it then this man sits on death row for 31 years, and in all this time, in all these so-called legal counsel has not found these errors and brought this up? It's unheard of. These gentlemen were granted new trials, but because of counsel's deficiency, they failed to timely file the paperwork to get these men the new trials that the Supreme Court had granted them. So now, the way the law is set up, they can't get that new trial now. They're procedurally barred. We need people's help. We need some voices out there. Gary Wayne Sutton is innocent. I have the evidence. I have spoke with Gary Wayne Sutton myself. I spoke to him about his legal team. I spoke to him about his legal team missing a deadline that could potentially cost him his life for a crime he didn't commit, for a crime, a murder of his friend that was found on his 28th birthday, brutally murdered on the riverbanks of Tennessee. And he sits accused, not only accused, convicted, and on death row for the murder of his friend and his friend's sister. Now, let me tell you this much. You don't have to take my word for it. There's videos. Go to the playlist on Gary, the interviews with Gary. You'll hear it for yourself. I talked to him about that attorney. Now, keep in mind, this woman is potentially could basically have killed him. And he said, I was raised to never even speak cross to a woman. But if I was to say something bad, if I was, I'd call that woman everything but a white woman. He still never cussed. He still never got irate. He still never, none of that. Now you're telling me a woman that potentially cost him his life, he won't even call her the B word or anything like that, but yet he killed a woman? It just don't seem logical to me. I've known a lot of murderers. I've known some psychopaths. Never has one been able to convince like that. So, and I have no doubts that Gary is not a psychopath. I have no doubts that Gary is innocent. I have all the evidence to show this. We need some voices that people will listen to help this man. We need voices out there to just blast the airwaves, blast the media, fill everybody in America's media streams, TVs, or whatever with information about Gary Wayne Sutton and his innocence. And we need to create such a public outcry that the Tennessee governor cannot do nothing but look over Gary's case. And then they will have no choice but to free Gary Wayne Sutton and fully exonerate him on both cases. There is no evidence on either case. Now, I mainly touched on the Tommy Griffin murder because that's our death row case and that's our impending date and our primary hit we need to get rid of. But the Sevier County case is just as bad. There's several other errors in there that I haven't even discussed because I'm trying to keep this down to a somewhat shorter video. And it's just impossible to bring it down to two, though. I hope this video has been informative. I hope it's been helpful. This is a plea to anyone out there with a voice, whether it be a celebrity, a musician, a social influencer, anybody with a voice. I don't care how big your channel is, how small your channel is. Get with me. Let's do some stuff on this. Share my videos, share this information. Go to change.org and sign the petition. There's information down in the description for that. There's a link. Go sign the petition to get Gary Wayne Sutton exonerated. There's a playlist on my channel titled Gary Wayne Sutton. There's a plethora of videos proving his innocence. There's videos with interviews from the private investigator, from the alibi. That's the other thing. He had an alibi for that weekend. Carolyn Weaver Miller was with him the entire weekend. But they wouldn't listen to her because they were intent on getting these two wrapped up in a murder. I plead and ask for your help. This is an innocent man living out a nightmare in America, on death row, convicted of killing his friend. A friend that was so close to him that he even held a room in Gary's place. And Gary didn't even allow people to stay at his house. But Tommy had his own room. And a friend that's body was found on Gary's 28th birthday. A friend he never got to mourn because he's been convicted and he was accused at the time of the funeral and everything of murdering him. So he was not even able to go to the funeral to mourn his friend. Imagine the nightmare. He has a daughter. He's known it was 1 year old when he was arrested. He's only known her from behind bars because of a crime he didn't commit. Please help. Anybody who's got any type of resources, we ask, we beg, please help. This man needs help and a voice. This is a matter of someone of a lower social class getting unfairly unjust treatment because of his financial status. Basically, if he was rich man and was able to hire all these experts and this and that, he wouldn't be sitting where he's at today. That shouldn't be an issue in our justice system in the United States. There's supposed to be equal trials and equal treatment of everyone. That's not the case. And this case is a prime example. I ask again, and I beg, please, please help. Thank you. I appreciate your time. God bless you all. I'm the Rev. Dr. Kev, and I'm out.